Something that I hear all the time is, and sadly sometimes from liberal or progressive leaning people, is kind of boasting about the late 90s and the Clinton surpluses. As we finally had a surplus, we finally balanced the budget. What's the problem with that framing and that discussion, and the implications for what happened to our economy, largely influenced by that surplus?
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about what actually generated those surpluses, because, you're right. There is a narrative out there that goes something like Democrats and Republicans work together in a bipartisan way to cut some spending and increase taxes, and that produced the surpluses. And we had the first, balanced budget in my lifetime. And wasn't that a great achievement? What a badge of honor. Democrats are the true party of fiscal responsibility. Um, this is just not historically accurate. This is not where those surpluses came from. I think it's important to reckon with what really generated those fiscal surpluses. And the reality is that it was a stock market bubble. That's where the surpluses come from. And if you've got, progressives who are under the, operating under the impression that this was generated in some other way, they really ought to take a look at Dean Baker's work, because Dean's a very good economist, I think widely respected among progressive circles. And Dean has banged this drum for now over a decade, to be sure. And he's written about the Clinton surpluses. So just Google Dean Baker and the Clinton surpluses. I've written about this over the years as well. When Godley, Randy Ray, all of us had lots to say about the Clinton surpluses and whether they were a good thing, or whether, in fact, they were being generated on the backs of the private sector, which, you had an unsustainable stock market bubble that fueled, people took profits. And so there were capital gains taxes that came flooding in, and that moved the budget into surplus. And then you had the start of a financial housing bubble on the backs of the stock market bubble, which kept the US private sector spending in excess of its income for a period of time. People could look at the economy, and a lot of people did, and said, wow, this is a Goldilocks economy. Look at this, right? Low unemployment, low inflation, high growth. This is the greatest thing in the world. But under the surface, if they had been looking at this chart that you have on the screen, they would have seen the leverage in the private sector and where that momentum was coming from. And it was private sector deficits that were always going to turn out to be unsustainable.
It's really important, I think, that people know this, because there's so much potential in it, and it changes how you view the entire economic system and the government, right? To know that, okay, the money has to come from somewhere. The deficit is a record of where the money's come from. If we completely eliminate deficits everywhere, there would effectively be no more money. We need money to make money. That's what people always say. And in MMT, it's sort of said in another way. You need dollars as this tool to put real productive resources to use, to pay workers, to buy land, machinery, tools, all of these things. And where we put the money matters. It affects our economy. It affects our lives in that way. And there's a lot of beautiful potential with what we do with that, but they frame it like it's this terrifying nightmare. They show us the national debt clock, which is an amazing image. We have a photo of it. And they try and make everyone terrified, almost as if they're looking at their account, seeing how much they're in the negative, thinking about, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to pay this back?